Greetings and welcome to Writers on Writing. I am your host, Dr. Brenda Greene, and I am coming to you from the studio of McGurvis College, which is hosting this, and also my home. Writers on Writing comes to you every Sunday and gives you our listening audience an opportunity to hear writers from the African diaspora talk about their work, their life, and their craft. This radio show, for those of you who are listening, is paid for by McGurvis College. And as I said in my home, the link is on YouTube, so you can view it or you can listen to it. I am very, very pleased to be in conversation this evening with Paul W. Paul Coates, right? Paul Coates, who is a real institution builder, the publisher and founder of Black Classic Press. He has a really, really interesting biography. Black Classic Press, we'll be talking about, has published a number of works that really highlight, I would say, I'm going to put this in quotes, kind of Black radicalism, Black history, Black activism. He's covered it all. And he's going to talk about that. Paul Coates is a native of Baltimore, Maryland. He actually was also part of the Black Panthers, and he'll talk about that. He also was a member or a staff member at the Howard University's Moreland Spring Research Center. He's been a contributing editor for a number of works. And in 1995, he launched BC Black Classic Press Digital Printing to specialize in publishing Black literature. But we're going to let him speak it among his words. So sure. I just would like you to share, Paul, who's born on July 4th, very symbolic, born on the 4th of July. So you were given a blueprint for how you move in this life. So just to talk about a little bit about your life and how you got to be where you are now.
So Brenda, I first of all, I want to thank you for even engaging me in this conversation, for you feeling it significant enough that what we do at Black Classic Press, that what I'm doing is significant enough to record. I appreciate that and do not take the honor lightly. In fact, this is 2024.
Yes.
Black Classic Press has been around now like 43, 44 years, something like that.
Imagine. And I remember when you started it.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
what does that say
See, you're
about the
dating
two of us,
yourself.
huh?
You're dating yourself. But I mentioned that because what's clear for me in this year is that Black Classic Press is a part of and a movement of Black publishing companies. And when I say that, I'm really talking about those publishers who I call the legacy Black publishers. Third World Press, which has been around for about, if we've been here 44, they've been around at least 55 years, 56 years. We're second with our 44 years. Then you have Africa World Press, and you have Just Us Books. I have a commitment and an understanding with myself that I exist because they exist. Okay, we've been able to manage this long because we have a kind of an alliance between ourselves and a support group among ourselves. So before I begin, I just want to acknowledge these other legacy publishers that actually cause us to be.
Right.
And then I want to add that not only was I born on the 4th of July, Brenda, I actually was born in Philadelphia. Okay.
Yes.
So and look, not that far from Independence Hall. So, like you said, I was born with a calling, but not for American independence. I was born as a counter to that stuff.
Yes,
You see what I'm
yes.
saying? So and I take that mission seriously. I take it that I came into this world to do what I do, to keep the words of those who precede me alive, those ancestors who precede me alive, and to amplify those ancestors, to give them. When I started, it was one generation, but we've already been here going into 3 generations. People talk about Black classic press. I have young people come up to me and they say, "My grandfather used to talk about Black classic press, so I'm glad to meet you." So when I see things like that, I know that I'm grounded and I do have a mission to make sure that the books that I value and I see as important, and you talked about them as being in the realm of Black activism and books by Black activists, and this is true. This is true. There's nothing in our literature that says that's what we do. But the truth of the matter is, I am concerned with making sure the record of our struggles, the record of our resistance to the oppression, those people who wanted to contain us, those people who wanted to enslave us. I have a commitment to making sure that record, as early as possible, is available to people long after you and I are gone. So my contribution is to the documents that our ancestors created for us and left for us. My commitment is to make sure that I cause those documents to be at least a generation or two longer. And that's what Black Classic Press is,
Right.
Brenda.
Right. So can you talk a little bit about some of the work that Classic Press publishes? I mentioned some of it, and it's kind of ironic, I don't always do this, but when you talk about foundations and you look at the work that Coates is doing, it's also a continuation of that tradition and
Yeah.
and of your philosophy of making sure that the work is documented. So if you can share with us the kind of work that you zero in on and publish and why it's called Black Classic Press.
Okay. I'll start with the Black Classic Press first. Well, I'll talk about the work first. Let me do that. Years ago, 40 years ago, almost 50 years ago, I knew that the importance of publishing. I knew that it was important for us to publish works by and about people of African descent, period, that we have that voice. We started, Brenda, as actually as a prison program. We began as a prison program. We began with the notion that what we would create is a program that brothers and sisters coming out of the jails would have a place to come into and dump their creative energy, their good energy, as an effort of rebuilding our community. We had examples of Malcolm X going to jail and being reborn. We had examples of George Jackson going to jail and being reborn, and so many other Black people who the system tried to crush. But once they went to jail, they were awakened and came back into our community or contributed to our community as new men and new women. So my ideal was, as you mentioned, I was in the Black Panther Party. When I left the Black Panther Party, I came back to Baltimore. I still had people in jail who I was committed to. So building a prison program was a way of supporting those people and supporting other people who were incarcerated. And the program, like I say, it was intended to prepare a space so people could come back into the space and contribute into our community. Well, we saw doing that to building a bookstore, which we did. We started with building a bookstore, the Black Book. And we also, even before the bookstore was built, we envisioned setting up a publishing company and then setting up a company that actually printed the books
Right.
for the publishing company and printed the books for booksellers, not only ourselves, but other booksellers that would have been engaged in liberation work.
What
So
year
the
was
first
this?
step,
What are the
this
years
is
we're talking?
1972,
Okay.
1972, and the bookstore was established as the Black Book. The publishing company didn't get started, even though we did some publishing. It did not really kick off until 1978. And when it kicked off, it was called Black Classic Press. Even though we had been doing some publishing before that, we treat 1978 as the formal date of Black Classic Press's founding.
Okay.
We were following in the footsteps of several other Black presses that
Right.
existed at the time.
Right.
Third World Press, for example, was a model for us. Aidiyana Press, which was down in New Orleans, Kalamu Ya Salam, and the collective of folks down there. Um, the East, which was, up in your neighborhood,
Yes.
up in Brooklyn. We were following in the tradition that these presses, Jahid Press over in Newark, Amiri Baraka, those presses were liberation presses, and they were focused mostly on the cultural, like making sure our cultural voice was heard. I heard it a different way in and I heard it largely because of people like when I say I heard it, I'm talking about the necessity of what we were going to publish, largely because of people like Dr. Ben.
Yes.
And I was exposed to Dr. Ben while we were doing the bookstore, and he and I became close during that time, and he just influenced me so much with all of the books. You know how Dr. Ben would get up and
Yes.
just, and he'd walk into the room and he'd say, I don't need to carry books with me. All
Yes.
of my books are up here. And he would talk about various
Inspiration.
books that no one could find and no one could just locate, people didn't know about. And that set me on a path of looking for many of the books that Dr. Ben talked about. And once I went on that path, I found other books that were connected. I never knew that we had ancestors that were writing in the 19th century, like David Walker, for example,
Right.
writing about our Egyptian roots and our Egyptian origin. But there were other people from the 19th century on up through the 20th century. These were Europeans as well as Black folks, and Doc talked about them all. So once I connected with them, the mission of Black Classic Press to republish those types of books because they were so hard to find at that time. They were so hard to find. The mission was set, and we proceeded to focus mostly on obscure books by and about people of African descent. Not necessarily, they didn't have to be written only by Black writers, but the more obscure those books were, the more I was interested in those books because, again, it allowed me to republish those books and extend the life of those books for at least another generation.
Right. So,
So that's where we got started.
right. And that's as you know, a major challenge. How have you been able to sustain Black Classic Press over the years? Because that is, we talk about a struggle. That's a major challenge. It's an important task, but I have to commend you and admire you for sustaining it all of these years, for being committed to doing that.
Yeah, yeah. The art we've been sustained, of course, because we have a tremendous community of Black people. You know, certainly some white people have supported us as well, but largely our support has come from the Black community who, um, in their all-knowing self, have supported us all these years. That's one. The other support has been my family, and sometimes friends, but largely my family. And when I say my family, Brenda, I married two of the most wonderful women in the world, and they have always been there to be my support, to be my rock, to be my comfort. Uh, now I married them separately at different times. I don't want
Yes, okay, let's be clear.
but I've been very, very fortunate. I've been very fortunate that the people who surround me, even today, on the printing side, my I have 2 daughters, and my youngest daughter and my oldest son work with me. And they oftentimes work for no money, okay, because there isn't money to pay them. So their labor becomes contributions to our effort. Um, I've been very, very fortunate. Our community has provided the support, and the people around me have provided the support, and the consistency of our efforts are largely because of that. Yeah.
Okay. So just going continuing, what have been some of the highlights over the years around the projects you've done?
Hmm. I have a couple of things. I talked about folks in the Black community who supported me. One of my early supporters was not African American. He actually was from Iraq, and he
Mhm.
used to print all of my books. We had a relationship, and he would print all my he was a printer. Mr. Barzinji was his name. He An Iraqi and an African American, we would sit down and talk sometimes for hours, and then we would get to the business of, well, these are books that I need printed. That man used to run tabs on me, Brenda, and I think you were there at our 40th anniversary.
Yes, I was.
You were at our 40th anniversary. And Brenda, that man um used to run tabs like, I don't know, Brenda, 150,000 dollars sometimes I would owe that man. And it wasn't like he had the money or what have you, but he enjoyed the relationship, and he trusted me. He trusted me, and he trusted what I was doing. I'm not so impressed even today when I think about it, about the money, as much as I am about his example. He told me this story one time about, and it's like a myth. People from the Middle East, they often have these stories. They tell this story about one time a guy was very popular, very, very popular. He was very poor, but everybody loved him. Everybody loved him. Well, one day he got rich. He just came into a lot of money, and people still loved him. They borrowed money from him, but after a while, these people began to disappear because they owed him money, and they didn't have the money to pay him back.
Right.
And one day he
Yes.
looked around, he said, I got plenty of money, but I have no friends.
Oh
I'm a
my
sad
goodness.
man. I'm a sad man. My friend, Mr. Barzinji, told me this story because, and then he told me the story, and then he looked me in the eye and he said, Mr. Coates, I want you to be my friend, okay?
Oh my goodness.
Don't leave
Precious.
me.
Very, very important
Don't leave me.
story.
So when I think about things like that, I think about, I've already talked about the support that I've received from my family, and
Right.
particularly the women in my life who have sacrificed so that I could be out front, you know? My Ta-Nehisi's mother, I had 5 children when I married her. And, not even when we married, when we first got together, I had 5 children. Ta-Nehisi was the 6th born child, and everybody knew she was crazy to be hooked up with a man that had 5 children. How are you gonna do that? Especially when she was largely the mother figure in our house, and she was the homemaker in our house. How are you gonna be hooked up with that, right? I think about her every day, and we're still very,
I
very,
had
very
an
close.
opportunity to meet her. Yeah, just I had opportunity to meet her at I think it was maybe it might have been your 40th anniversary.
It probably
Yes,
was
yes,
because I celebrated Mr. Bartender and I celebrated her, at the same time.
right,
For for Cheryl to come into my life at that time, for her to create an opportunity for me to have my family together and to build a home, it's what I needed, but I didn't have the capacity to build that, Brenda, because I was thinking my brain said, "Revolution has
right,
come." You know,
right.
I'm off on that, and she was there building the home. I don't know I don't have a life without the life she gave me. You
Okay,
know, so when you talk about things that go, I think about Walter Mosley, you know?
right, right,
Walter Mosley, hooked up with me and always knew we did a deal that produced $1,000,000, but the money was not gonna stay in the company. The money just was, it was gonna go to pay for this, pay for that, and it did. And the one thing that we both were conscious of that was that we were 2 black men, and we had an opportunity of friendship, and we took that opportunity. We took
right,
that opportunity.
right.
So
So,
I've had the value that was in 93, 95. I'm sorry, 95. I've had the value of that male friendship.
right, so you talk about the women, the family, the men, the friends around
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
So as we think about the future, we're in this period of banned books, where books, many things are being censored. What is the future for independent Black publishers? Where do we go from here? And we actually we're coming to a close. So just
sure,
like you
sure.
to reflect on what is
Sure,
the
that's
future.
that's that's a good point to reflect on. Brendan, I have to say I don't know because I don't have the answers for
Oh
that,
no,
right?
but we can, yeah. But
Yeah,
we have to think about it, right?
we do, but, one of the things about those legacy publishers, they were people who were committed to making sure that we got books out for a community view, okay? Much of the publishing done by independent publishers today is done so much as individual publishing. It's like what I think, what I feel, and what my experience has been. Nothing's wrong with that. Don't misunderstand me. What I'm looking for is the transformation and the recognition that the efforts so many people who are publishing, the recognition that that could be extended in support of our community and extended in a way that our community will have a community voice as opposed to solely an individual voice.
Right.
I don't know if that point is clear to
No,
you,
well,
but
I think it speaks to what you spoke about earlier. How part of why you've been able to sustain is the community of other legacy publishers that you've
yes,
formed. And I'll never forget when we took the trip to Cuba, and it was a community. You brought together
excuse
people
me.
who were in the independent Black publishing industry, and brought them together. And you talked about how you support each other.
Yeah,
I remember when I was managing Incurable Books, we tried to bring together all the independent Black booksellers so that we create a win-win situation. So I think what you're speaking to, the importance of community, part of our survival has to be connecting with other people
it
in
has to
other
be.
organizations. We
It
cannot do
has to
this
be.
individually.
It
And
has to
you're
be.
saying, I Third World Press, I'm getting something now every other day. They have so many books. There's so many people who, Dr. Hakeem Abudi would come to a book signing or come to your store and say, he sees something that's worth publishing. I will publish it. He didn't
Mhm.
think about what it would cost. It's
Right,
that same commitment. So how
right.
do you inspire that commitment among people and realize that we can do this collective? It has to be collective
I don't
community.
know, I think the inspiration comes again from the example, and I do believe that, I believe that the space is there for folks to step into. One of the things that helps create that space, though, Brenda, is people like me stepping back and getting out of the way. so that the opportunity is there for folks to step in and do what they have to do, express the support of our community in a not necessarily a completely different way, but in a way that works for them and the community that is being created now, the community as it exists now. So I don't know how that manifests itself, but I believe it will. I believe it will. I mean, we've always had that as we've always had our voice running in that way, and I think we still will, Brenda. I just
What are
don't know
some
how it'll
deliberate
manifest itself.
strategies that we can use or that you can say to people who are looking at ensuring that our voices are sustained and those voices that would be obscure continue to be published and are present in our libraries and in our schools?
So this is interesting because I guess I don't look at it that way, you know? I look at it like the people who are that next generation, they step forward themselves. It's not even like and so many people have done this. Okay, so many people have done this and do this with me all the time. They come with a commitment. Once that's done, then you work with that commitment and you shape it. But in terms of telling people how to be inspired and stuff like that, I don't know how to do that. I know how to be an example or to set an example because I'm just going to live my life. You understand? And those folks who are attracted to that, they're attracted to it, Brenda, and they come forward. These people come forward. I work with young people all the time. I'm working with a sister now who spends time in the States and in Nigeria who has a passionate interest in publishing and she will fulfill on it. The people who I've worked with over the years who've worked with me, all of those people came forward. I work with a sister now, Natalie, who I think you know. Natalie came to me when I was married to Churl. She had been at a session that Churl was talking about Black Classic Press, and she walked up to Churl and said, I want your job. Okay, I want your job. A few years later, she had Churl's job.
Okay, all right.
Churl came home and told me about her. She said, I met this dynamic woman who told me she wants my job. And Charles said, "Cool, you can get it." So I think those people have to step forward. You talk about high key. High key said something one time that always comes back to me. You will know us by the way we walk. You
Yes.
know? You will know us by the way we walk. And those people, we don't need, it's not like you need the whole Black community to be committed to publishing our stuff. You don't need that. You need the community support, but you only need a few people to speak with their heart and to commit that heart to being our voice and making sure our voice gets heard. We have some young people now. There's a young sister who's working with a Black independent academic press who is coming along. She just needs more time and she'll be a legacy publisher. And so I do expect it to happen. I do expect people to make that transformation, Brenda. I just again, I'm not one to say when, how, or what have you, other than we need to continue to be an example for them.
Well, thank you so much for being that example. And thank
Thank
you
you.
for, Dr. Margaret Burroughs talks about what will your legacy be? You are living your legacy. You can talk about your legacy because you are deliberately thinking about it and enacting it. So we really appreciate and value you. And thank you for the work that you've done. And we are very, very pleased that we are honoring you as an institution
Thank you.
builder at the 17th National Black Writers Conference. So
Thank
let
you.
people know how they can find out more about Black Classic Press.
Sure, sure. We do two things. We publish under the name of BCP Digital Printing, and you can find us on the web under BCP Digital Printing. And you can find us under blackclassicbooks.com, blackclassicbooks.com, and BCP Digital Printing. All of it is again it's a reflection of our community, and we exist because of our community.
So thank you once again. You have
Thank
been
you, Brenda, for the opportunity to be able to share. I appreciate it so much, and thank you.
okay, you're welcome. And you've been listening to Writers on Writing with Dr. Brenda Greene. This radio show is paid for by Medgar College. Write us at info@centerforblackLiterature.org, and make sure and visit our website, www.centerforblackLiterature.org, where you can sign up for our newsletter and find out more information about all of the programs that we are doing. Thank you once again. Come back next week.